They took my seat like it was a harmless little mistake, like it didn't matter, like I was just an older woman traveling alone, and older women traveling alone are treated like extra luggage, something that can be moved, rearranged, figured out later. They didn't shove me, they didn't yell, they didn't do anything that would look dramatic on camera. That's the part people don't understand about disrespect. Most of it is quiet. Most of it is done with smiles. Most of it is done by people who believe you won't push back, because pushing back is unpleasant, and older women are expected to be pleasant all the way to the end. But what I remember most, the image that stays framed in my mind like a photograph you don't show anyone, is the moment I walked past them, past their smug comfort, past their oops, past their polite little theft, and into first class. Not because I begged, not because I caused a scene, but because I did what I spent 30 years teaching children to do. I stayed calm, I stayed clear, and I stayed firm. My name is Lorraine Carter. I'm 68 years old, and I'm from Florida, born in a town where the humidity wraps around you like a wet blanket, and the sky looks like it's always deciding whether to bless you with rain or punish you with it. I'm retired now after 3 decades in a classroom where children learned grammar and history, and without realizing it, learned the deeper lessons too. How to share space, how to apologize, how to tell the truth even when it would be easier to hide behind a shrug. I didn't live a glamorous life. I lived an honest one. I saved in small amounts, I planned ahead, I kept receipts. I kept paper copies of things because Florida storms have a way of eating electricity, and I learned long ago that a printout in your hand can be more powerful than a screen that goes dark. This trip was not a casual vacation. It was a rare indulgence I gave myself, like a quiet promise. My niece, Leia, was getting married, and she had chosen a destination wedding that made everyone groan a little and then secretly smile. A warm place, water you can see through, sunsets that make strangers hold hands. Not Greece this time, not Europe, something closer. The Keys. A wedding in Key West where the houses look like they're wearing pastel clothing, and the air smells like salt and sunscreen, and something sweet frying somewhere you can't quite see. Leia had asked me to be there not just as family, but as her something steady. Those were her words. She said, "Aunt Lorraine, you're the person I think of when I need to remember I can do hard things." When my husband Tom died 2 years ago, I made myself a promise that sounded simple but took work to keep. I would not spend the rest of my life shrinking. Not my body, not my needs, not my voice. Tom used to tease me about how I always took the uncomfortable seat so other people could be comfortable. He'd squeeze my hand and whisper, "Lorraine, you don't have to be the sacrifice every time." So when I booked the flight from Miami to Key West, short, yes, but still long enough to make my hip complain if I sat cramped, I paid extra. Not because I was trying to be fancy, because I was trying to be kind to my own body. I chose a seat with more room, a seat that didn't force my bad hip into that sharp, grinding position where it starts as discomfort and ends as pain you carry for days. I printed the confirmation and folded it into my cardigan pocket, the one with deep pockets I've had for 10 years, the one Tom used to call my teacher coat because I always had something in it, a pen, a mint, a spare bandage, a little paper that could save you from chaos. The ticket wasn't just a seat, it was a boundary. It was me saying quietly, I matter enough to arrive whole. If you like true stories where small, sensible things went out, consider liking and subscribing, not because I'm trying to sell you inspiration, but because there are so many quiet moments like this in life, and people don't talk about them unless someone listens. My son, Eric, drove me to the airport. Eric is a good man. He is not flashy. He is gentle in a way that makes you soften without noticing. He's the kind of man who fixes your porch light without announcing he fixed it. He has Tom's steadiness, not Tom's stubbornness. He has a new wife, Tessa. And Tessa is the kind of woman who walks like she is already late and everyone else is the reason. She is not cruel in obvious ways. She is efficient. And some people mistake efficiency for goodness, but I've spent enough years watching children become adults to know the difference between confidence and entitlement. Tessa likes control the way some people like sugar. Without it, everything tastes wrong to her. At the curb, while Eric unloaded my small suitcase, Tessa leaned against the car and glanced at my boarding pass like she was inspecting a receipt. "You're in the nice section," she said, and her smile had that polished edge. "Must be nice?" I didn't take the bait. I simply said, "It will help my hip." She made a little sound in her throat, half amusement, half dismissal, like pain was something you could negotiate with attitude. Inside the airport, Florida air conditioning hit me like a wall of cold after the humid parking garage. I pulled my cardigan tighter. The tile floors shone. The overhead announcements felt like they were designed to make human beings sound like packages. Eric walked on my left, steady. Tessa walked ahead, checking her phone, already annoyed at something invisible. At the gate, Eric kissed my forehead, still my boy, even at 42, and said, "Text me when you land, Mom." Tessa gave me a quick hug, stiff as a formality. Then she said lightly, "Let's hope nobody steals your seat." She laughed at her own joke. I didn't, because something about the way she said it felt pointed. Like the universe had just been dared. Boarding started the usual way. Groups called, people crowding the line as if being first into a metal tube would change their lives. I waited. I always wait. Teachers learn patience the hard way. When my group was called, I stepped forward and handed my pass to the gate agent. The scanner beeped. A pause. Then a second beep. The agent's eyes flicked up to me and then down again. "Ma'am," she said, polite and practiced, "it looks like there's been a seat change." I felt my stomach tighten, not with fear, but with familiarity. Because older women know this feeling. The feeling of being moved, like it's a small administrative adjustment, like your body doesn't have consequences. "My seat?" I asked. "What change?" She tapped on her keyboard, and the tapping had the same indifferent rhythm as a cashier scanning items at a grocery store. "It shows you're now assigned to 19B, she said. That number meant nothing to her, but to me it meant cramped. It meant my hip. It meant arriving at my niece's wedding with a smile on my face and pain in my bones. "I paid for 8C, I said calmly. I pulled out my folded printout and placed it gently on the counter as if I were placing a fragile thing that deserved care. She glanced at it and sighed, the small sigh of someone who didn't create the problem and doesn't want to own it. "It happens sometimes," she said. "Aircraft change, operational reasons." Operational reasons. That phrase is a blanket they throw over you so they don't have to look you in the eye. I kept my voice even. "Is 8C occupied?" She hesitated. "It shows as occupied, yes." "By whom?" I asked. She gave me a look that said she wasn't supposed to answer. Then she said, "It's just assigned now." I could have argued. I could have raised my voice. But people like Tessa thrive on emotion. They swim in it. So I did what I always did in a classroom when a student tried to distract from the truth. I lowered the temperature. "I need you to note," I said, still calm, "that this seat was purchased for a medical comfort reason. Hip, mobility. I'm not asking for a favor. I'm asking for what was paid for." The agent's face softened slightly. Not sympathy, but respect for clarity. She typed something. Then she said, "Go ahead and board, ma'am. Speak to the lead flight attendant as soon as you get on. They'll help." That's another phrase that sounds comforting and isn't. They'll help. Help often means delay. Delay often means accept. But I nodded because I understood the flow of these systems. Sometimes you don't win by fighting at the wrong desk. Sometimes you win by walking forward with your proof intact. I stepped onto the plane. That familiar smell hit me. Recirculated air, faint coffee, perfume, and something metallic that always reminds me we are human beings in a tube in the sky, pretending it's normal. I walked down the aisle, counting rows. 8. There it was. 8C. And someone was in it. A man, maybe mid-30s, broad shoulders, wearing expensive headphones like a badge. Next to him, in 8B, a woman with glossy hair and nails done with that perfect salon precision. They looked comfortable. Too comfortable. Like people who had no doubt they belonged wherever they sat. And when I looked closer, my heart made a slow, sinking recognition. Tessa's carry-on bag was in the overhead bin above them. The little beige tag Eric had put on it, the one with our last name, hung off the handle like a confession. My seat wasn't taken by a stranger. It was taken by family. I stood there for a moment, and the aisle behind me began to fill. Someone coughed impatiently. Someone muttered, "Come on." I breathed in and stepped closer. "Excuse me," I said softly, the way you speak when you're still giving people the chance to do the right thing without shame. The man didn't look up at first. Then the woman did, and her eyes flicked over me like a scan. Age, alone, polite, probably easy. "Yes," she said. "That's my seat," I said. She smiled. Not sweet, not apologetic, a smile like a door being closed gently. "Oh," she said, "we were told we could sit here together." Together. That word again. Together is often used like a weapon, as if being a couple makes you more deserving than being a person. The man finally looked up and said casually, "Yeah, sorry, they moved some seats around." He said it with the comfort of someone who believes sorry is enough. I did not argue with them. Not yet. I turned and flagged a flight attendant, a young woman with tired eyes and a practiced expression that said she had already dealt with 2 crying babies and 1 angry businessman. "Hi," I said calmly. "I'm Lorraine Carter. My purchase seat was 8C. I've been reassigned to 19B, but 8C is occupied. I have my confirmation and printout. I have a hip condition." She glanced at me and then at the couple in my seat. The woman in 8B leaned toward the attendant and said, too brightly, "We're together. They said it was fine." The attendant gave a polite nod, the kind that doesn't mean agreement. Then she looked at my boarding pass. Her brow tightened. "Just a moment," she said, and walked toward the front. I stood in the aisle while people flowed around me like water forced around a rock. Some people gave me sympathetic looks. Others looked annoyed, as if my dignity was an inconvenience to their schedule. I didn't blame them. Airports and planes don't encourage humanity. They encourage speed. And speed is where older people get erased. A minute later, the lead flight attendant appeared. Older, composed, hair pulled back. The quiet authority of someone who has seen everything and learned not to be impressed by anyone. She looked at me first, not the couple. That mattered. "What seems to be the issue?" she asked. I handed her the printout. I showed her the confirmation on my phone.
I kept my voice even, like a steady line on paper. "I purchased 8C, I said. "I was reassigned without notice. I have a hip issue. I'd like my purchased seat or an equivalent." The lead attendant glanced at the couple. The man shrugged like it was a mild misunderstanding. The woman in 8B smiled again. Hinge smile, polished, confident. She said, "It's really not a big deal. We're all going to the same place." And in that moment, I felt something in my chest that wasn't anger. It was the familiar ache of being minimized. Not yelled at, not insulted directly, just reduced. Like my needs were optional, like my comfort was negotiable. The lead attendant didn't respond to her immediately. She looked at the manifest on her device. She tapped. Her eyes narrowed slightly, the way a teacher's eyes narrow when they see a student's name on a paper that doesn't match the handwriting. Then she said something that made the air shift. "Sir," she said to the man in my seat, "may I see your boarding pass?" He laughed lightly, like she was being silly, but he handed it over. She checked it. Then she asked the woman for hers. She checked that too. Then she looked back at me, and her voice went calm in a way that carried weight. "Ma'am," she said, "you were reassigned due to an oversell in the premium cabin. Your seat 8C was reassigned to accommodate a passenger traveling as a pair." The woman in 8B lifted her chin like she'd just been justified. Together. But the lead attendant wasn't finished. She continued, "However, you purchased that seat, and the reassignment did not note your mobility need. That should not have happened." There it was. Not drama, not yelling. A simple confirmation that I had been wronged. The couple's faces flickered. Just slightly. Because people who steal quietly don't like being named, even politely. The lead attendant turned to them. "Your assigned seats are 19C and 19D, she said. "Please move to your assigned seats." The woman's smile tightened. "But," she began. The lead attendant didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Now," she said. The man sighed dramatically, like he was the victim of inconvenience. But they stood. They gathered their things. And as they stepped into the aisle, the woman looked at me with an expression that tried to shame me, as if I had done something wrong by not disappearing. I met her eyes and said nothing, because silence when you're right can be louder than any speech. They moved toward the back and the aisle opened. The lead attendant gestured toward 8C. "Please," she said. I stepped forward. But before I sat, she added quietly, "One moment, ma'am." She looked at her device again, tapped twice. Then she said, "I'd like to offer you something." I blinked. "Offer?" She nodded once, firm. "We have one seat available in first class," she said, as if she were reading a simple fact. "It is a better accommodation for your mobility need. And given the way this was handled, I'd like to put you there." For a second, I didn't react. Not because I wasn't grateful,
but because my mind was still in the fight, still tracking proof and fairness and holding my calm like a shield. Then I felt it. Relief. Not triumph, relief. The kind you feel when you realize you won't have to pay for being treated like you don't matter. The lead attendant stepped slightly to the side and motioned toward the front. And that is the moment people picture when they read the title. They took her seat. She walked into first class. I didn't run. I didn't gloat. I didn't make eye contact with the couple as I passed. I simply walked. Down that aisle. Past the premium section that had tried to swallow me quietly. Past the curtain like a thin rumor of hierarchy. And into the wide, generous space at the front. First class has a different air. Not better air, really, just air that makes you feel like you're allowed to exist without apologizing for it. The seat was larger. The legroom was honest. The attendant placed a small bottle of water and a folded napkin on my tray like a little ceremony. "Welcome," she said softly. I sat down, and the seat held me the way I had needed all morning. A moment later, as boarding continued, I saw the couple again. Not close, but visible. They were in row 19 now, squeezed, shoulders tight, faces stiff. And that polished woman's expression had changed. Not outrage, not tears, just shock, because she had expected me to accept less, and instead I had been elevated. Not because the world suddenly became kind, because I refused to be erased. A few minutes later, the lead attendant returned. "I'm sorry," she said, and I could tell she meant it in the way professionals mean it when they're also frustrated with the system. "I know," I said. "Thank you for fixing it." She nodded. "Sometimes," she said quietly, "people assume an older passenger won't push back." I looked at her and said, "That's why I bring paper." She smiled, a real smile this time. When we took off, the plane tilted upward, and Miami fell away beneath us like a glittering postcard. I thought about Tom. He used to say the sun was something you respect, and as the light hit the edge of my window, turning the clouds bright, I felt him in the quiet way you feel someone you loved. A presence, not a ghost. A memory that steadies you. A flight attendant brought me a small cup of ginger ale and a snack in a little tray. "On the house," she said. I thanked her. And I sat there, sipping something sweet and fizzy, feeling my shoulders unclench. This wasn't about luxury. It was about recognition. Because what people don't understand is this. Sometimes the most painful thing isn't losing a seat. It's the assumption behind it. The assumption that you're expendable, that your discomfort is acceptable, that you're easier to move because you won't complain. That assumption follows older women everywhere. Doctors' offices, grocery stores, family gatherings, airplanes. It follows you until you decide to stop letting it. Halfway through the flight, Eric texted me, "Landed yet?" I stared at the message, thumb hovering. Then I replied, "Not yet, but I'm okay." Then another message came, fast. "Tessa says there was an issue with seats?" I didn't respond immediately, not because I was plotting, because I was tired of explaining my right to exist. When we landed in Key West, the heat greeted me like a familiar hand. Florida heat is a thing that doesn't apologize. It simply is. I stepped off the plane feeling steady, not triumphant, steady. At baggage claim, I saw them. Eric looked relieved to see me. Tessa looked tight, the way people look when they're embarrassed but don't want to own it. Eric hugged me hard. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm fine," I said. Tessa forced a smile. "Well, that was a mix-up." Mix-up. That word people use when they want to shrink wrongdoing into a harmless accident. I looked at her and said gently, "It wasn't a mix-up, Tessa. It was a choice." Her eyes widened slightly. Eric's face tightened, confused, caught in the middle, still trying to see everyone as good. Tessa said quickly, "We were just trying to sit together." And there it was again. Together. As if togetherness is a permission slip to take from someone else. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't embarrass her in public. I simply said, "You can be together without taking what someone paid for." She went quiet. Eric cleared his throat and said, Let's just get to the hotel." At the hotel, Laya came running toward me in her white robe, hair pinned up, eyes bright with that pre-wedding nervous joy. "Aunt Lorraine," she cried, hugging me tight. "You made it." "I made it," I said. And in those words was more than travel. It was survival. It was dignity. That evening at the rehearsal dinner, I sat near Laya and listened to the clinking glasses and laughter. The ocean was close enough that you could smell it. The sunset turned everything warm, like the world was forgiving. Eric and Tessa sat farther down the table, not banished, not shamed, just not central. And that's how consequence often looks in real life. Not a dramatic explosion, just a quiet repositioning. Later, Eric found me near the water. He stood with his hands in his pockets like a boy again. "Mom," he said softly, "Tessa told me you said she took your seat." I looked at my son, and I realized something tender and sad. Sometimes the hardest part of being a mother is watching your child struggle to admit the truth about the person they chose. "I'm not trying to hurt you," I said. "I'm trying to be honest." He swallowed. "Did she?" I paused, then said, "She knew what she was doing." He exhaled slowly, like someone letting go of a fantasy. "I'm sorry," he answered. And I meant it.
Because apologies, when they're real, feel like something unclenching. The wedding day came, bright and beautiful. Leia walked down the aisle toward the man she loved, and I cried, quiet tears, the kind you wipe away without making a show, because joy doesn't always need an audience. And as I watched her, I thought about the seat. Not the seat itself, but what it represented. That people will take from you if you let them. They will take your place. They will take your comfort. They will take your voice. They will take your dignity. Not with violence, with convenience, with smiles, with "it's not a big deal." But the truth is, it is a big deal, because small disrespect is how bigger disrespect begins. When I flew back to Florida, I carried that lesson with me. Not bitterness, clarity. I kept the printout folded in my cardigan pocket, even though the trip was over. Not because I needed proof anymore, but because it reminded me of something I don't want to forget. I am not an easy person to move. Not because I am difficult, but because I am a human being, and human beings are not meant to be rearranged for someone else's comfort. People ask me now if I enjoyed first class. I did, but not for the luxury, for the symbolism. Because when I walked past them into that seat, it wasn't just an upgrade. It was a boundary made visible. It was the universe saying, in its quiet procedural way, "She matters." And if you're watching this and you're older, and you've started to feel like the world treats you like you're supposed to accept less, I want you to hear me clearly. You don't have to. Bring your proof, keep your voice calm, hold your ground. Because dignity doesn't arrive with a trumpet. Sometimes it arrives with a folded printout in your pocket and a quiet walk into first class. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs it. And if you want more true stories where quiet people reclaim what's theirs without losing their humanity, you know where to find me.